Good morning, everybody. You can continue chatting a little bit after I finish. Just to let you know that Rabbi Mark is not here today. He's at a funeral. And Rabbi Alexander has offered to start earlier and to end later. So we'll have a program today, okay?
And speak and tell and do a sermon or do whatever I need to do. It doesn't faze me. But technology makes me crazy. So this is why I needed help with this, because what I told Rosalie today and Susie is that I know that your first class is not going on, but we're starting my class with a new discussion over the next couple of weeks, and that is about Jewish gangsters. So we're moving from pirates to gangsters, but it's been really, really fascinating. So what I thought that I would do in order to make this the most complete class that you could probably have today, I wanted to find some things that were videos about the topics that we're talking about, so that you can both hear what I've put together for you, but also hear some things that come from other people on videos or YouTube or whatever. So does that make sense? Sorry Sorry it was a little late getting started, but I hope that it'll work out. So first of all, we still say the prayer for learning together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. I'm going to take a sip of. So, I want to start by saying that we're going to be talking a lot about some of the things that were good that Jewish gangsters did. But obviously, gangsters are gangsters, and some of the people that we're going to meet as gangsters are people that really didn't want to engage in violence. And then with people whose names you will probably recognize, some of them were people who engaged a lot in violence. That being said, one of the things that we're going to take a look at pretty soon is why some of these people were crucial for us. And that makes it a very, very difficult conversation. So honestly, there's very few excuses for behavior of most of these Jewish gangsters, particularly the ones that we're going to be talking about that were in the 20s and the 30s, leading into World War II. So you're going to get an opportunity to meet several of them, thankfully not in a dark street. People whose names you'll recognize, like Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel and others like that. And what we're going to see is that they participated in a number of different rackets, all of them problematic, numbers rackets, illegal drug dealing. If that were the case, then they might be picked up and brought to court, just the way we experienced that in our own country just a few days ago, because of drug dealing and problems with that that have affected the United States. Prostitution, unfortunately, gambling, loan sharking. So I don't want to tell you that anybody that we're going to specifically look at were nice men. They weren't nice men. That's a good question. A nice guy is an upstanding, honorable, honest person who deals with problems with other people with words and not with guns, and unless they're at war, right? So we have different perspectives of these things when people are at war. So I guess what I want to say is most of these times these guys are very problematic, but there were times that they thought that their people were at war. And they had to respond the way that they felt that they could defend and help their people. So, let's just say you're going to hear a little bit actually from the last living gangster amongst this group, who is still alive today. I think he's just turning 88, and is now actually an upstanding person, but we'll hear from him a little bit later today. So I think you probably all know how this could come about. all of these people that we're talking about came to the United States either at the very end of the 1800s, which is when the people started coming into the United States who were from different kinds of nationalities, including ours. Where did they live? Well, if it's New York, it's the Lower East Side. So what kind of neighborhoods were those? Irish, right? The combination of all of those. And we all know, because we've all learned this, or we've been there to see it, or the history, it was not a great place to be. And they were dealing with parents who couldn't speak the language, who had come with basically nothing. And those kids, many of them, now kids did different things, many of those kids went to school, got trained for something, lived an upstanding life. Some of them became doctors, some of them became business people. But then you have the people who thought that they were responsible for taking care of their family any way they could. And many of those people are the people that turned into gangsters. They couldn't get the jobs, they couldn't get the education, they weren't able to have the education, and yet their parents and their families were sometimes starving. So that's what I want to lead you up into. But it was the Lower East Side, and Brownsville, Brooklyn, and Maxwell Street in Chicago, and Boyle Heights in Los Angeles. And I've already said some of what I took notes on, but then what we're going to talk about is what happens when the beginning of the 19th century, 1900s begins, the 20th century, 1900s begins, and what happens at the beginning in the late teens and 20s of the 20th century? Prohibition, thank you very much. So when Prohibition comes, a number of people who were on the edge of being gangsters or were gangsters found out that there was a whole lot that they could do with Prohibition. So we'll get into that with some of these people. And so one of the things that in reading this that I've done years ago, and also in terms of this, was the idea that all of these people who were promoting Prohibition really made more criminality happen in the United States than anything else that could have happened. It led to everything. Every vice you can possibly think of came about because people were pushing Prohibition against alcohol and et cetera.
One of the interesting things that came about just after women got the vote, because women were upset with their husbands getting drunk all the time.
So some of this came about right about when the time that women were getting the vote, and they were upset with their husbands who were drunk all the time, and so they voted for Prohibition. Shouldn't have let those women vote. Anyway, I'm going to share with you today, before we go into the videos, and before we see this one and others, that there is a first gangster. A first, not only Jewish gangster, but a first leader for everybody in the Italian, what became the Italian mafia, and also with regard to what happened with Irish groups. All of those things started with a guy, unfortunately, named Arnold Rothstein. And the reason that I want to tell you about him first is because he was one of the first who trained all the rest of these guys. But the other reason I want to say is that Arnold Rothstein did nothing that some of these other guys did that were helpful to a community that was being persecuted. So it's not that he probably wouldn't have done that. I don't think so, but I don't know for sure. I never got a chance to meet the guy. He was alive from 1882 to 1928. So really not when everything was pushing. So here's about him, if you don't mind. Is that okay? Okay. Nothing gave a stronger boost to organized crime in America than what I just said, Prohibition, which took effect on, anybody know when? January 16th, 1920. So I can't even tell you it was near the end of the year. It was the very beginning. So the ban happened on the manufacture and sale of drinking alcohol and did nothing to dry up the demand for whiskey and wine. Some people speculated, in fact, that banning alcoholic beverages made them even more appealing, not to people who drank all the time, but to those who otherwise would not have indulged. Because, of course, the human response is if somebody tells you, you can't do that, you say, oh yeah, I can do that, right? It's a natural human response. So in 1989, a retired Detroit gangster told a historian that during Prohibition, people wanted booze, they wanted dope, they wanted to gamble, and as that Detroit gangster said, they wanted broads. And for a price, all the people in the community who were on the threshold of becoming gangsters provided them with those amusements. And he said, we only gave them what they wanted. Historians speculate that Jews comprised half of the nation's leading bootleggers, and that Jewish gangsters like Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel dominated organized crimes in certain cities. Of course, the city with the largest Jewish population, we'll see how long that lasts, produced the largest number of Jewish gangsters. The kingpin of the New York Jewish underworld was not a street tough gangster, but a refined gambler, and that was Arnold Rothstein. According to the other gangster who was still alive, Rothstein was recognized as the pioneer, big businessman of organized crime in the United States. So let me talk a little bit about that. A lot of these guys who are gangsters, they're not all stupid. The people who come to work for them and become their flunkies are people who do not have a lot of brain power or don't have a lot of education. What? That, of course, I said something about that at the beginning. But there were a lot of guys who were really brilliant, somewhat educated, and that is what Mr. Rothstein was. He was called the J.P. Morgan of the underworld. Its banker, its master of strategy, and Meyer Lansky, a man of some intelligence himself, observed Rothstein had the most remarkable brain. He understood business instinctively, and I'm sure that if he'd been a legitimate financier, he would have been just as rich as he became with his gambling and other rackets. So he was born to a wealthy family. His father, Abraham Rothstein, was a businessman and was dubbed by the New York governor, Al Smith, Abe the Just. The Just. He was a very religious Jewish man with a philanthropy viewpoint that made him give away a lot of the money that he earned, his father. And, sorry. So this was a very, very, very difficult thing. He was the chairman of the board of New York's Beth Israel Hospital. His older son became a rabbi, and Arnold was interested in business, but not his father's type. He figured out that if anyone was going to make money out of gambling, he had better be on a different side of the fence. So he opened gambling parlors. The thing that's really interesting about this kid, because he was a kid when he first started, is his mathematical skills were incomparable. So when he got hooked on gambling, he utilized his mathematical knowledge in order to really make a success out of it. But as he did that, he also built big, wonderful, fancy gambling places that people loved to go to. And then he started to buy racetracks. And then he tried to figure out mathematically how to make sure everything he wanted he could calculate. So he would know what would happen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me just skip a little bit. He worked on selling liquor under the table, but he did so in such a way that the exact amount of liquor would get sent, so it would not get looked out by anybody who was in charge of police or anything. So he was like constantly thinking mathematically. If you ever see The Great Gatsby, or you have seen it, Scott Fitzgerald had a Rothstein-based character called Mayor Wolfsheim. So here's though what Rothstein did that nobody could ever forget. But did he, is the question. In 1919, we're going to have a World Series in baseball. The one that was called the Black Sox Scandal of 1919. Anybody hear about this? In 1919, baseball was America's pastime, even more than it became later on. But because the team considered themselves grossly underpaid by their team owner, Charles Comiskey, 8 members of the Chicago White Sox conspired to lose the World Series to the Cincinnati team if they could find a gambler willing to pay them to lose. So they approached people to try to find out who should be the one that they want to get money from to lose. There was a person who served as Arnold Rothstein's bodyguard. He was a famous boxer, Abe Attell. He was called the Little Hebrew. And the teammate said for $100,000, he would guarantee that his teammates would lose to Cincinnati. We don't know whether Rothstein rejected that idea or whether he took on that idea. But a lot of people believed that he did. One way or the other, when Rothstein found out that they were going to lose the game deliberately, he bet every single thousands upon thousands of dollars on the Cincinnati team to win. And of course they did. This history says that the people who played on the team actually got very little for throwing their game. But nobody knows, nobody found out, nobody could prosecute anybody who was responsible for that. But there's a lot of discussion that it was Rothstein. So, races, gambling, alcohol, baseball games, all of that. But what was most important about this guy is that he taught all the upcoming major gangsters how they should do their business. Because, as I said earlier, he could have been an upstanding, amazing businessman. We're talking about a very early age, and by the time things were done, he had millions upon millions of dollars at a time when that was huge. He lost his life because, and nobody really knows exactly who did it, he was playing in a game, I think a game of poker or something like that, and he never lost. But at this game, he kept losing game after game after game until he owed like $200,000. $200,000 wasn't a big deal to him, but what was a big deal to him is that he thought that somebody was cheating. Now, he counted things when he was playing cards, but he didn't cheat. But whoever it was, so he refused to pay and said that this was ridiculous, that he was getting scammed, which is kind of ironic. Nothing happened right then, but a little bit later, somebody shot him, and he didn't die immediately, and in the hospital, they made a mistake, and so he didn't live through it. But being the kind of gangster he was, he absolutely refused to say who had shot him. And that's part of their deal. And it happened over and over again. So that's the first gangster, the first major gangster. Yes? When he was killed, he was in his 40s. He was? Oh, I didn't know that. Are you sure it's Rothstein? What? Fanny, what I'm being told is that his wife was Fanny Bryce. Somebody look it up. You've got your phones here. Was Arnold Rothstein? Mm-hmm. He was not indicted. Right.
was Rothstein. I know it was Arnie. But even if that wasn't him, that was definitely about him.
Right. Okay, so folks, the next thing I want to do, I wanted to tell you.
Billy Rose, Nikki Arnstein, and Frank White were her three husbands.
Okay,
Okay, got it wrong.
it's okay. There's so many wild stories. So people don't know about this guy as much as they know about Bugsy Siegel, right? You know, at least you know the name. But now I want to go out on and I want to show you a piece of the more positive aspect of this. Even though we are not yet at World War II, I think I want to show you something that on video that deals with some of that. Because I chose to share this with you, not because it's, yay, let me tell you about all the criminals in our people, but rather to say, yes, there are criminals in our people, but some of those people became heroes as well. So, yeah.
Is that why there were so few sports people of our community, from our community?
I don't think so. There are quite a few sports people from our community, and even more so earlier on in baseball, because I like baseball, so I studied Jews in baseball for a while. But I don't think so. All of those guys, they weren't Jewish baseball players. All of the guys from the White Sox, none of them went to jail, but they were never allowed to play. They were banned for life. By the commissioner, yes. They were banned for life. But not a single one of the baseball players were Jewish. And the only thing that they could really determine is that the guy who had been a fighter who was working with Rothstein is who they went to try and find somebody to get them paid off for throwing that game. Okay. I got to take a sip of water. What time is it? Woohoo. Okay. All right, so I am going to play you something that does not fit in terms of the time frame that we've just been talking about. But I want it to lead into learning about these guys in a different kind of way. So, let me see if I can do it. I hope I can do it. Second. And maybe I can't. Let me sit down. The reason I can't find it is because it was up. I know, but she had it set up and now it's not set up. Do you want to come here and look? Oh, wait, is this?
Well, it's not even the same picture.
It is the original picture.
But it's not on your screen there.
Okay, hold on. Give me a second or 10 minutes. hold on. Siri, call Heather. It went away from my desktop. I mean, I didn't touch it, I just taught, and it went away, but it's on the screen. What do I do? I don't have a mouse. Yeah. You know, the thing where you had both things up there that I could switch to, it's not, I can't find that. Okay. She's coming. Susie's my mic protector. and Ernie. All right. So I'm going to just share a little bit more information before we get to this. The Jews who fled Europe for U.S. in the late 1800s were seen as weak, afraid, and unable to defend themselves. Many were careful not to rock the boat, and they couldn't shake the memories of their neighbors in other places turning on them. Jewish mobsters, however, had no fear. They stood up for themselves. They showed the world that Jews weren't weak, and some young Jews loved them for it. So they came to the United States, and they thought they were coming to the Golden Medina, the golden country, but it didn't always work out that way. So did you find it? Like, can you show me?
So I changed it so that it's the same thing here as it is up there.
Okay,
So-
but where's the other one? Okay, so that one.
Yeah. And then
Oh, we
it's
can-
going to show you the same thing. up
Okay, we
there.
can do him first.
All right.
What does it say his name is?
Myron Sugarman.
Thank you. All right, can you want to set him on?
I can start.
The right image of what a Jew is all about. In a most complicated world, the underworld. For that reason that I took that attitude. That's the reason I'm sitting here. I'm alive. My name is...
The volume's not
I'm
up
known
yet.
as the last Jewish gangster. I wrote a book, my biography, autobiography. It's called Chronicles of the Last Jewish Gangster. So I'm born 1938 in Newark, New Jersey. Growing up as a kid, my father, Alav Sholem, was connected with the Jewish underworld. Oh, that world was
Can you hear him now?
very proud Jews. Not particularly religious. For them, Judaism, being a Jew, was a question of Jewish pride. They were born Jews. Their parents were religious.
There's more. They could get, there's more sound possible.
My father, along with his friends, grew up in a period of the time which was called the Roaring Twenties. So there were a combination of Roaring Twenties and proud Jews. And then, of course, in the 1930s, in Newark, New Jersey, there was growing anti-Semitism, Jew hatred, that was very prevalent in the United States. Growing up, the stories, my bedtime stories that my father told me, were stories of Jewish heroics, of the Jewish
do that. People at home can't hear. Is there a way to put the mic closer to the?
Let's go see. The garage from the 770 Eastern Parkway down the block. And I see the rabbi, I see the Rebbe. I was fascinated. I saw something that was I never saw before. The place was packed on a Saturday night. And of course, then I started to become curious. And I would go more and more. And we joined the Orthodox Shul in Livingston, New Jersey. So your question is, what is the greatest thing that you learned from being in the mob? I say, right without might is useless. Why do I say that? Right is not sufficient. You're only halfway there. You need to have might. It's got to be the strength, the power, the force to reinforce the fact that you're right. As we're learning today with the struggle that's going on right now in Gaza. I'm 85 years of age. I'm going to be 86 in January. About a year ago, somebody who was like a godson to me, the son of Italian Jewish immigrants from Tripoli, Libya. His name is Avi. We call him Sicilian Avi. They brand him Sicilian Avi street kid. Very smart, very successful. He says, Pop, we need to form a defense organization. We got to make Jewish kids tough. They're not tough. And he says, there's rising anti-Semitism. I says, I know about it, Davey. He said, we want you to be the godfather. We want you to godfather it. I said, fine. So I accepted the responsibility. And name of our organization is called United, Empowered, We Stand. The legacy that I want to leave behind before I go. I don't want to go out of this world. At this particular time, I came into this world in 1938 when the Nazis were on the rise, and it looks like I'm going to go out of this world when Muslim terrorism is on the rise. They say from river to the sea, Palestine will be free. We're going to say from river to the sea, Jews reclaim God's property. I leave you with that.
I'll tell you in a minute. I just need to turn it. Sorry. I don't know what's happening here. I hate this. Okay. My calendar? All right. Just a minute, please. You just look at my calendar. There's nothing to hide. All right. I'm going to turn it around so you don't keep looking at my very messy. And then I hope I'll be able to get the next one up. Yeah, it should take a break. What time is it? Is it 11? Yes, exactly. Please do. All right, we're going to get started again in just a minute, but there were some questions. So the man that you just heard, who was the last of the gangster families, is named Myron Sugarman, and he wrote a memoir that's called The Last Jewish Gangster, From Meyer to Myron. And it is, so if you enjoyed or learned or created a sense of kind of camaraderie with him, that's the book that you should look for. You can probably find it on libraries, Libby or whatever it is, if you want to have an audio book, I'm not sure. But what I really liked about Myron Sugarman that I wanted to share with you, and why I chose that particularly, by the way, on YouTube there are some longer things, longer times with him doing question and answer. What I found really great about the video that I showed you is that he was speaking at a Chabad gathering. And I thought that was really great. And partially what I thought was really wonderful is, the reality is that most of the, these guys who were gangsters were not religious. Like, for the most part, they weren't religious. When we were talking about pirates, there were a few of them that we talked about that really were religious. But these guys didn't go to services. But they did support synagogues. Like, so they would send money to the community, but they didn't ever go. They didn't keep kosher. They didn't send their kids to school, Jewish schools. But they did at important times. But he did. Yes, he did. And one of the reasons that I thought that was lovely is he said he wanted to learn. And who was the person who guided him toward that? Well, kind of, but it was really his son who chose to be religious that made him realize that he better check some things out. So I thought that was really lovely, which is why I picked that particular one. Yes?
Okay. That Chabad gathering is the National Jewish Retreat that they've done for about 17 years. I've been to about 14 of them because they have things like that. They'll have all kinds of authors or people with various experiences at the retreat.
That's great to know. I'm ready for you, Cecil. Cecil lived in Brownsville, which was mentioned as a major place for Jewish gangsters and other gangsters, and he has a story to tell you about that.
And it's going to be very, very short. True.
He knows me by now.
Yes, I do, Rabbi. I arrived in the United States in 1957. The very, very first place that I went to live was Brownsville. And, I heard the stories about what had happened in Brownsville. And to summarize, is at the height of the gangsters' tenure in Brownsville, for the average citizen, it was the safest place. Those gangsters made sure that the petty criminals would not be in Brownsville. And they told me, if you were just an ordinary citizen, everything in life was very nice, no problems. Now, occasionally, you might find a corpse in your garbage. But that was about the only difficulty they encountered. Other than that, they felt very safe. Thank you.
And that is gangster life, right? So before we move into this this next part, I just want to share a little bit more with you. So we already talked about what was happening. What happened? I'm using the mic. It's been right here the whole time. So in America in the 30s, we all know that it was a period of rampant anti-Semitism, and particularly in the Midwest. Some of you may know about Father Charles Coughlin, the Detroit's radio priest, and William Pelly of Minneapolis, who pretty much are now being replicated by several different people in today's world. They organized brown shirts in New York and silver shirts in Minneapolis. These groups were different. And most Jewish organizations wanted to find a respectable way to respond to this and not alienate people who were not Jewish, who were supporters. So rabbis, but not just rabbis, started to ask the gangsters to break up the American Nazi rallies that were happening. Some of them were absolutely huge. Just so for fun, Larry King, you remember him when he described Jewish gangsters as his childhood heroes at the time. So, horrified by the Nazis in the streets of New York, Judge Nathan D. Perlman and Rabbi Samuel Wise asked Mayor Lansky and his men to get involved. They told him he wasn't allowed to kill anyone, but other than that, all bets were off. A judge. So one of the things that we're not going to do today, because time will run out, but that are really fascinating, are these other guys that you have heard of and exactly what they did. And so it's something that flows through the actual Jewish history, leading up to the end of the massive gangster times, but they also helped when Israel was becoming a state. They helped during the wars. They went so far as to help during the Six-Day War and the Yom Kippur War. So some of these things are still going on. What I want to do is I would like to share this with you. This is not from this year, but you will see why this particular news story was done when it was done. And it has to do with the coming of a book. So let me put this on for you. And I will hold the microphone close to it.
Don't know today the role an infamous Jewish mobster played in fighting the rise of fascism right here in the Five Boroughs.
To the palaces of George Washington, to the Napoleon gentlemen.
It was the evening of February 20th, 1939. A capacity crowd inside Madison Square Garden. Images hard to believe today.
To the palaces of
Poor
George Washington.
Nazis. These are
8
all
decades
people
ago,
who
they
were
called it a pro-American rally sponsored by the German-American Fund, an organization based in Manhattan with thousands of members across the country. Inside the most famous arena in the world, the Garden, the swastikas hanging next to a portrait of George Washington. There were scuffles and fights, but also open support of Hitler from sympathizers in the city, endorsing the rise of fascism in Europe. It was 2 years before the U.S. would join World War II, short reels like this providing news updates to Americans everywhere.
Over the North Sea, the bombers fly. An RAF air fleet on its way for a daylight attack against a #1 objective.
In the buildup to the conflict, back home, there was also unexpected buildup of support for the enemy.
As they hatched Nazi conspiracies against the United States.
And throughout it all, there was another war. This one unfolding on the streets of New York, with a few unexpected heroes.
And the war for the hearts and minds of America has already begun, but only a limited number of people are aware of it.
Michael Benson is author of the new book, Gangsters versus Nazis, How Jewish Mobsters Battled Nazis in Wartime America.
The German American Fund was trying to build solidarity in the German voters so they could be a political force. That was their short-term plan. In the long term, of course, they wanted to make the United States a larger carbon copy of Nazi Germany.
So City Judge Nathan Perlman recruited infamous Jewish gangster Meyer Lansky.
Meyer Lansky was a childhood friend of Lucky Luciano, Bugsy Siegel, and Mickey Cohen. Next time the Nazis have a rally in Manhattan at the Yorkville Casino on East 86th Street, they charge in and they put a hurting on these guys who are not at all prepared for a fight. It had never occurred to the Nazis that they could have problems. 7 Nazis ended up going to the emergency room. The worst injury is a broken femur because, and Lansky later admitted this, he and another guy dropped one of the Nazis out of a second-story window, which is played fast and loose with the no-killing rule, but they got lucky.
In Newark, Longy Zwillman, seen bottom right, battled fascism. Mickey Cohen, bottom left, cracked Nazi skulls in Los Angeles. And David Berman beat back the threat in Minneapolis. When the judge offered to pay for their services, they all refused. Here's what they told him.
It's our duty. Later on, they called it their patriotic duty.
Those gangsters called it their patriotic duty. And by 1941, the U.S. was pulled into World War II after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, of course. The wave of fascism rising in the States mostly subsided, with those gangsters having played their part. Michael Benson's book, Gangsters versus Nazis, How Jewish Mobsters Battled Nazis in World War II Era America, is now available everywhere.
That is quite fascinating
Real
to know
page turner.
what happened
Right on the
in the
streets of
city.
New York, parades, all kinds of different gatherings, all before World War II.
Okay. So I think I'm just about done for today, but let me just finish a little bit. Sorry, thank you.
Is this going to be a continuing topic?
We're going to be talking about the more famous gangsters who were involved in all of these things. We'll learn about who they were, where they came from, what they did that was terrible, what they did that was good, and yes. So, and that guy's not a gangster. He's just somebody who thinks you should have cinnamon and water before you go to bed. So I want you to know how Lansky, so when Meyer Lansky was called by the judge to be involved in this, he was very disappointed by the restraints, but enthusiastic for the assignment. He accepted all of Perlman's terms except for one, and you heard that. He would take no money for the work. And he later observed, "I was a Jew and felt for those Jews in Europe who were suffering. They were my brothers. For months, Lansky's workmen effectively broke up one Nazi rally after another. As Rockaway notes, Nazi arms, legs, and ribs were broken and skulls were cracked, but no one died. Lansky recalled breaking up a brown shirt rally in the Yorkville section of Manhattan. The stage was decorated with a swastika and a picture of Hitler. The speakers started ranting. There were only 15 of us, but we went into action. We threw some of them out of the windows. Most of the Nazis panicked and ran out. We chased them and we beat them up. Hold on. Let's see what they did next. We wanted to show them that Jews would not always sit back and accept insults. In Minneapolis, William Dudley Pelley organized a Silver Shirt Legion to rescue America from an imaginary Jewish communist conspiracy. In Pelley's own words, just as Mussolini and his black shirts saved Italy, and as Hitler and his brown shirts saved Germany, he would save America from Jews. Minneapolis gambling czar David Berman confronted Pelley's silver shirts on behalf of the Minneapolis Jewish community. Berman learned that silver shirts were mounting a rally at a nearby Elks Lodge. When the Nazi leader called for all the Jew bastards in the city to be expelled or worse, Berman and his associates burst into the room and started cracking heads. After 10 minutes, they had emptied the hall. Berman took the microphone and announced, "This is a warning. Anybody who says anything against Jews gets the same treatment. Only next time, it'll be worse." After Berman broke up 2 more rallies, there were no more public silver shirt meetings in Minneapolis. So now that's where I want to stop with that. I think what Larry King said was very significant in the time. Now let's talk about something else for a minute. You know that Superman comics and other of those kinds of comics were all written by Jewish people who were trying to get across the idea of positive strength. And the fact that, and you can see it in a number of the different old Superman comics, which are pretty amazing. That happened a lot. But during that period of time, there was obviously more of an attention to having strength, but not necessarily try to have violence. But many, 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 many kids living in New York and other places where these kinds of things were happening were happy to get training to become strong themselves and really did look at those people who were helping them, who happened to be gangsters, as heroes. And that's where we'll stop today. Sure. Look, Susie, I'm remembering the microphone.
I grew up in the 1930s in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago, which was an Irish Catholic neighborhood. And there was a gangster named Capone who lived in the downtown area of Chicago, who decided he wanted to expand his territory to include the south side of Chicago with the Irish Catholics. So there was always this fight between the Capone Italians and the Irish Catholics in my neighborhood. And at that time, it was the numbers game that they had, that the Irish had. I remember having paid 5 cents on numbers. Each day was a different number combination, and you paid a collector 5 cents or 10 cents to participate, and it just grew. And there were some people who made $5, and that was the area that I grew up in.
Chicago hasn't changed much. Yes?
I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm just looking up, there was a lot of gangsters there. And from the 30s to the 70s, involved in prostitution, numbers, and racketeering. But they came to Vegas. They started Vegas, the Cleveland gangsters. Yeah. And also, can I finish? Okay. Also, Superman, the two guys that wrote it were from Cleveland. Yeah.
Go to Vegas, win a ton of money, and go see the Mom Museum.
There was something that Myron Sugarman or Meyer Sugarman said that really strikes a nerve for me. You talk about Martin Luther King as opposed to Malcolm X. I was in New York when Mayor Kahane started the Jewish Defense League, and I mean, I could tell you a story. I won't even go into my dad, who was born in Brownsville, and all of that. But the thing that Myron Sugarman said is right and might. And if you look at history, and yes, you need to be right, but until you've had might to back you up, people just will not pay attention to you. They will take advantage of you, and and it's very hard for me to wrap my head around that, because it's almost like, yeah, you have right on your side, but you need to be strong. You need to be strong. We need Israel. We need the religious Jews need the soldiers to back them up. I mean, it's just, you need that, otherwise, you're just not going to get anywhere. You have a lot of talk.
So we're going to hold on to it. I just want to point out 2 books to you that, in addition to the one that you heard about with regard to fighting the Nazis, and the one from Mr. Sugarman, which you can look up. It's very easy to look these up. You just look up books about Jewish gangsters, and they'll all show up. But just in case, The Rise and Fall of the Jewish Gangster in America, and Our Gang, Jewish Crime and the New York Jewish Community from 1900 to 1940. So if you're interested in this, after we get done talking about it a little bit more, there are many, many different options that you can get, and I'm sure that some of them are in the library. So that's it for today. Now you get to choose between being a pirate and being a gangster, and still having good things. Thank you to everybody who brought me different kinds of additional information from things I've been teaching. I really appreciate it.
one, what's the one versus of the Nazi, what's the name of
Yeah,
that? I don't have that any.
hold on.
Check 1 2 1 2 check. Check 1 2 check 1 2.